Hello, welcome to this week's episode of Undercurrent. I'm Deanna Cooney, your host. I hope you've had an excellent week so far. In our first story this week, Tegan speaks with Christopher Carroll about his one-man fringe show, Icarus.
I'm here today at the Blue Room Theatre to chat to Christopher Carroll about his upcoming show, Icarus, at the Perth Fringe Festival. So, the show's Icarus. Could you tell me a bit about the premise and what it's about?
Sure. Well, the name is drawn from the ancient Greek myth Icarus, of the man who flew too high, and perhaps due to the headiness of flight, or maybe as a metaphor for ambition, flew too close to the sun, his waxen wings melted, and he fell into the sea. But this show has that seed in it, but is really about a very modern story of a normal man, a man who is not political, who is not particularly engaged, who perhaps is not particularly aware of his surroundings, who gets caught up in the midst of a civil war and is forced to flee his home, to take his life into his hands, and to go on an epic and arduous journey, and eventually stows away in the landing gear of a plane.
Where did the idea actually come from? Like, when you were thinking, oh, I want to do a show, like, how did you come onto that idea?
This one was actually just reading the newspaper one morning about like 5 or 6 years ago, and just coming across this, what seemed like a murder mystery story initially, of this body that had been found in a fairly affluent London suburb. There was no identification, there was no sense of what had happened or how it had ended up there. And following this story over the subsequent days, it came to light that the body had fallen from a plane that was coming into Heathrow Airport, and that this wasn't the first time this had happened, that this was a semi-regular occurrence, and that there are dozens of stories all over the world where this has happened. People taking this incredible risk, and obviously propelled by incredibly desperate circumstances. So there was something in that really humanized the idea of someone who's labeled with the tag refugee, and the sense of how extreme one's conditions must be to force you into that situation. I think the language around refugees can be misleading. It can often be people searching for a better life, as if they're just looking for an upgrade, rather than what are incredible, unimaginable conditions that really force them to leave everything behind.
Yeah, and I was going to say, so have you toured this before, or is this your first time with this show?
This is the world premiere with this one. It's a little bit back to front. I'm based in Canberra, and I have been putting it together with a theatre in Canberra, but it just so happens that they take a break over summer. So it worked out to do it here at the Blue Room first, and then I'll bring it back and do it in Canberra at the end of the month, and we'll see where it goes from there.
What would you say to like up and coming performers that want to get involved in something like Fringe? Like, how would they go about it? And yeah.
Well, I would say having a chat with a venue like the Blue Room here is a great place to start. When I was here 2 years ago, I was at another venue, but the programming at the Blue Room really impressed me. There was some friends who I studied with in Paris who were doing a show here, and they were very open here when I just walked in and said, actually, I'd love to have a chat with you about my work and the possibility of doing things with you in the future. And from talking to other people who are based here in Perth and who work with them regularly, they're very supportive, and they're not only about getting audiences through the door, but really developing Perth-based artists, and really nurturing them along. So I'd say that's a great place to start. The Fringe in general, I mean, for people based in Perth, it is a great opportunity to get involved, and to see an awful lot of shows. So the fact that the festival is not too big, it's not like Adelaide, it's not like Edinburgh. If you can get involved with a show somewhere or other, you can get your hands on an artist pass. You can be there at the artist bar. You have an opportunity to chat to performers who are coming from all over the world, and it's a great opportunity just to kind of mix, to see work, and to draw inspiration from all of that.
Alrighty, well, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
This has been Tegan for Undercurrent.
Up next, Bass speaks with Magistrate Felicity Zempilas about her work and her experience with the Winston Churchill Foundation.
So you've had the privilege of going through the Winston Churchill Foundation or Trust as a fellow, and how was that experience for you?
I have had that experience, so I was very lucky to be given that honour in 2017, and my fellowship travels happened last year in 2018. And it was a phenomenal experience. I don't think there's any other opportunity like that where they essentially say, here is a sum of money for you to travel overseas and to study something that you're passionate about and come back and share that experience. And I think it's just the latitude that you're given with that fellowship to do what within your area of expertise or interest you feel would be of benefit to the community in Australia. That is such a gift. So it was a great experience.
It certainly sounds like it. So what was the topic that you identified that there's a gap in Australia that you could research overseas and bring here?
Well, I am currently in the magistrate in Perth's mental health court, which is referred to as the Start Court, and that's in Perth Magistrates Court. And our court's been operating for about 5 years, but in the context of mental health courts internationally, particularly in the United States, that's a very short period of time. They've had similar courts operating for up to 20 years.
Sounds very specialised and very sort of niche field. Does it have to be that kind of specialised for a person to be able to get awarded as a fellow to go out and research a topic?
I don't believe it has to be so specialised, and I appreciate mine was, because I work in that area. And from my understanding of the other fellows from 2017 and other papers that I've read, there can be applications over much broader subject areas. But because you are given such latitude and you can travel all over the world, you need a focus. And if you go with too broad a focus, you may find that it's very difficult to write the paper at the end, because ultimately that is what you're working towards. For me, professionally and personally, it was an opportunity to travel by myself and immerse myself in something for a couple of months without other distractions. I'm a magistrate, I sit in court every day. I never get the chance to watch other people do that. And when you're in a therapeutic court like the mental health court, there are a particular set of skills that come with that are outside the normal skills that judicial officers have or are taught. So I got to watch other judges use those skills day in, day out, and that for me was a great experience, and one that I probably will never get again. And I think it's helped me do that part of my job a bit better.
Having said that, would you think that other judges in other courts, perhaps not even the mental health courts, could benefit from this as well if they went out and did some of this research for themselves, or learned, maybe even read your papers? What would you say?
Well, hopefully they will read the paper. But I know that other magistrates have taken up opportunities with Churchill fellowships. One of our children's court magistrates in Perth did a fellowship a couple of years ago in relation to fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, and has produced a really valuable paper in that regard. And I definitely encourage any other magistrates or judges to look for those opportunities to travel overseas and learn what's happening elsewhere. It doesn't have to be the United States. Certainly in other Commonwealth countries there's some fantastic things happening. Anywhere you can go and learn from others and their experience and bring it back to Australia is a fantastic opportunity.
Invaluable. Thank you so much for your time, Felicity. I'm Bas Tadros for Undercurrent.
Bathers Beach down in Freo has featured semi-industrial art installations for many years now. The tradition began with internationally renowned potter Joan Campbell, who worked out of what is now the Cadogo Art House for many years, 27 in fact, right up until her death.
This is the J Shed, a quintessential Fremantle cultural icon. The J Shed provides locals and tourists from all over the world open access to working Fremantle artists. Come in and experience these working studios.
I'm here visiting J Sheds, which is an absolutely unique experience for Fremantle. I've got a group of Aboriginal people with me, and we're getting up and close and personal with the artists. It'd be a tragedy to actually lose this for Fremantle, as it's a unique experience.
I think the J-Shed for the Arts are just amazing. It gives the public an opportunity to see professional working artists and also the mentoring and residencies. Coming in from Canada, Granville Island has the same concept. Don't lose it, keep it, it's great.
One day I happened to be walking past with a friend of mine, and I saw Jenny's beautiful ceramic works, and immediately I was drawn into the space because it's so unique, and the fact that you can like have the seaside right near where you're working, it's just fantastic.
Where else in the world could you walk in and witness artisans performing a 3,000-year-old process and a world-renowned artist at work just walking into J-Shed?
For 25 years, the J-Shed Art Studio and the Greg James Sculpture Studio have provided a stable and professional nucleus for the arts community in the J-Shed. Let's embrace these unique arts businesses.
We are about to take a short break, so go grab yourself a cool drink and come right back because we've got more Perth stories for you.